Good afternoon. Thanks, Jenny. I appreciate it. Good afternoon to everyone. I wanted to welcome you to this afternoon's webinar on spring data compliance review. And again, thank you for being with us. So we had close to 100 your colleagues with us this morning, and had a great session. I think you're going to learn a lot from this morning. Here we are already halfway through February, and certainly ready for spring to roll around. But you're going to, we want to thank you again for everything that you do, and tell you to keep hanging in there, and make sure that you let us know if there's anything we can do for you. Continue to provide us any feedback that you have, and hope you have a great afternoon and a great webinar, and we look forward to hearing from you. So with that, I'll turn it back over to Jenny and James, and we'll talk to you all soon. Thank you all very much.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Department of Local Government and Finance webinar about the Pay 2021 property tax data submission process and the compliance reviews that the department conducts involving property tax data. My name is James Johnson, and I serve as the director of the DLGF's Data Analysis Division. This webinar, which will last roughly about an hour, will focus on several different areas related to property tax or abstract data. First, the information covered in today's webinar will provide you with a greater understanding of the process for submitting your property tax data via Gateway Abstract. Additionally, we will discuss the compliance review process that the department conducts on the property tax data during the spring, as well as how the real property and personal property data reviews from the fall factor into our compliance review process in the spring. Finally, we will discuss how the public can obtain the abstract data without even needing an account to sign into Gateway. Please note that the focus of today's webinar is primarily on the property tax data that county auditors submit each year during the February and March timeframe. That said, county assessors may find the information covered in today's webinar beneficial, since we will be highlighting the connection between the real and personal property assessment data and the property tax data as it relates to our compliance review process. One other quick item to note about today's webinar. We very much welcome your questions. If you do have any questions that come up during today's presentation, please type those into the Q&A box, which I think is at the bottom of your Teams window. And if time allows, we'll try to address some of those questions at the end of today's webinar. Additionally, we'll be compiling the questions and the department's responses to those questions into a Q&A document that will be posted to the department's webinar page soon. So with that said, let's jump right into our presentation. So let's start off with discussing the process for submitting property tax or abstract data. Since the Pay 2019 cycle, Gateway Abstract has served as the mechanism for county auditors to officially submit their abstract to the state. For auditors who are on the call webinar this afternoon and have been around for several years, you may remember that under the previous process, you would submit an Excel template that contained your abstract data, and it was quite the template. It seemed like thousands of columns of data worth on it. And in 2018, the department partnered with the Auditor State's Office to launch Gateway Abstract, and for the Pay 2018 cycle, during that year, Abstract was seen as kind of a trial run. The Excel template still served as the official submission of abstract data, but during the 2018 cycle, we encouraged the counties to upload their data to Abstract, and kind of in an effort to get familiar with the application. And then starting in 2019, Gateway Abstract became the official process for submitting abstract data. So instead of submitting an Excel template to the Auditor State's Office, county auditors now generate from their local tax and billing system a series of text files that they then upload to Gateway Abstract. And as part of those text files that are uploaded, the tax data and adjustments files are included in that upload process. Under the previous abstract submission process, the counties would send their Excel template to the Auditor State's office, and then they would send their tax data and adjustments files, which basically contains the same information that was on the Excel template. They would send those data files to both our agency and to Legislative Services Agency, LSA. But since the tax data and adjustments files are now part of the Gateway Abstract submission process, county auditors no longer need to email the tax data and adjustments files to the department and to LSA. So as long as you have successfully uploaded your data files to Gateway Abstract and submitted your files and submitted your abstract information, we will have access to the tax data and adjustments files. You no longer need to email those two files separately to us or to LSA. So after the county auditor has uploaded their text files to Gateway Abstract, they will then click on a button to run a series of calculations, and then after Gateway Abstract processes those calculations, the auditor will then go through and review the results in Gateway. And it's important to note that county auditors will need to review all the various screens under the abstract sections and will need to complete their official submission under the review section of Gateway Abstract. The Auditor State's office will review that submission and will grant ultimately the final approval of the abstract to the county. And the deadline to keep in mind for your abstract data is March 15th. So you have until March 15th, which is a little less than a month from now, to submit your abstract data in Gateway. So due to time constraints today, we unfortunately won't be able to do a live demonstration of uploading your abstract files and going through the review and submission process. However, we would like to highlight several different screens that will be key in the upload process and submission process as county auditors work through submitting their abstract data in Gateway. The first screen we want to point out, this is the Gateway main page, our home page. So county auditors, when you log into Gateway, this is the screen that you're taken to. And over on the left side of the screen, under that green column heading where it says Department of Local Government Finance, there is an option for abstract. And that is the application that you will want to select when you are ready to upload your data to Gateway, your abstract data to Gateway. So after you click on the abstract option, this will take you to the Gateway Abstract homepage. Now, a few important items to point out before you actually even get to the process of uploading your data files to Gateway Abstract. There are a few items that you will want to complete first. One of those is the pre-abstract survey. If you look over on the left side of the screen under the menu option there, you will see a pre-abstract survey link. You'll click on that link, and I think there's a series of 10 pretty short and simple questions that you will need to complete and submit before you will even consider uploading your files to Gateway Abstract. Another item that will need to be completed before you upload your files is the Property Tax Relief Workbook. If you're a county that offers LIT, local income tax, property tax relief credits, there's a workbook that you will need to complete and upload to the Auditor State's office. And that workbook will need to be completed before you do your Gateway Abstract file upload. And the third item that you'll want to do, and is probably the most common sense and critical one, is you'll need to actually run through the property tax calculation in your local tax and billing system. So you have to calculate the taxes for pay 21 first, and then after you do your tax calculation for pay 21, you'll then be able to generate those files that will be uploaded to Gateway Abstract. So after you've gone through those steps, those first 3 steps, and you are ready to upload your files, after you log into Gateway Abstract, over on the left side, you would click on the File Upload screen. And that will take you to the screen where you will upload your 7 different text files. And as I said, there are 7 files that are required to be uploaded. A few of those text files pertain to TIF districts, TIF information. Even if you are a county that does not have TIF districts, I think there are 4 counties throughout the state that actually do not have any TIF districts currently. You will still need to generate those files from your tax and billing system and upload them to the Gateway Abstract. Even if those files actually contain 0 records, they will need to be included as part of the upload process. So after you upload your 7 different text files, and again, all 7 will need to be included as part of the upload process, you will then click on the Run Calculations for Upload button. And that's this button there in the center of the screen says, under Current Upload, Run Calculations for Upload. One thing to note about the calculations process in Gateway Abstract, be a little bit patient after you click that button. While we would all like to see the calculations pop up on the various screens instantaneously after we click that button, it may take a little bit to actually run through all the data files and process the calculations. So depending on how many records you have in your data set, it could potentially take maybe a half hour possibly. There's not really a hard fast rule on how long it will take to process the files, but the larger the data set, the longer it probably will take to process through all the calculations. So after you click that Run Calculations button, recommendation, wait maybe 20 minutes to a half hour, then refresh the screen, check back, and then assuming everything calculated correctly, you'll see everything is listed in green there for the files that you uploaded. It'll say that's been completed and each of those files have been processed. Now, if you happen to receive a file that's got red listed next to it, that means that there's been an error that was generated when they were trying to run this application, was trying to process the calculations. If you do see an error noted, then you want to click on the Details button next to that file, and that will provide a list of the errors that came up for that particular file. And what we recommend is getting a screenshot of those errors and then sending that to your tax and billing software vendor so that they can take a look at those errors and help you troubleshoot to see what corrections may be needed to the files. And then after those corrections are made, you can regenerate the text files and do another upload of them and run the calculations again. But assuming if everything goes smoothly and there aren't any errors in your text files, then everything will be listed as green there, and you will be able to proceed with reviewing the various sections of the abstract application. And you will want to go through over on the left side each of those sections under the abstract sections there. So AV summary, rate and levy summary, total taxes summary, tip total taxes summary, district summary. All those sections you will want to review after you've run the calculations on your data files. And then when you get to the bottom there, there's going to be a county review section. And this is meant to flag any variances. I believe it's set at 20% if I'm not mistaken. So any variations in AV or amounts greater than 20%, there will be a section popped up here on the county review section that's going to require you, county auditors, to submit a reason or justification for why there's a variance in that particular value. On the screen here, you can see for tax district 14, there is a variance of 41% in the real property TIF AV from the CNAV value that was submitted the previous summer to what is now on the abstract value. So the county will need to provide a justification or explanation for why there is a 41% variance between those two data points. And if it just so happens that you don't have any items that are outside that 20% variance, then there won't be any items here on this screen to actually provide explanations for. And then after you answer any questions that may require additional explanation, you'll want to click on the overview and signature section, which is at the very bottom of the left side of your abstract menu. And this screen is designed to verify that you have gone through each section of the Gateway Abstract application. And you can see on the screenshot here that everything is listed in green, meaning that all the various screens for net assessed value have been reviewed by the county auditor section. The tax rate and levies, all those screens have been reviewed by the county auditor's office. If there were a certain screen that had not been reviewed, then instead of showing green, this would be listed or shown as red, and it will direct you to the actual page that the county auditor's office would need to review and verify that the information in Gateway Abstract looks correct. So after you've gone through and reviewed each of the sections of Gateway Abstract, you will ultimately get to the bottom of the overview and signature page. And that's where you'll check the box that you acknowledge you've reviewed all the information, all the sections of Gateway Abstract. Everything looks good based on your review, and then you'll enter your name, title, and your PIN, and you'll click submit. And then once you click submit, that information will then be sent to the Auditor State's office for their review and approval. So that is that's a summary of the actual process for submitting your abstract data in Gateway. When we get to the end of today's presentation, I'll do a quick review or show you where you can get additional information from the Auditor State's webpage on how to submit your files if you have questions. There's a very useful Gateway user guide manual for abstract submission. But after you've gone through the data submission process, then it's our turn, the department's turn, to actually take a look at the data files that you've submitted in Gateway Abstract. So the property tax data compliance process, it has historically been a joint effort between the DLGF and LSA, but starting with the Pay 2019 cycle, the department became the primary agency that oversaw, or that still oversees, the compliance review process of property tax data. Now, unlike the real and personal property data compliance reviews that the department conducts, the compliance review process for property tax data takes place in simply one phase during the spring. And that occurs after county auditors have uploaded their data, their property tax data, to Gateway Abstract. Now, as part of the compliance review process, it's handled in kind of two different states, or two different phases, if you will, for property tax data. The first aspect of the data compliance review actually happens within the Gateway Abstract application itself. So when you upload your data files to Gateway Abstract, the application will run through a number of compliance checks on those data files. One of them pertains to just verifying that the parcel number and property record number formats are correct. This means that for any real property parcels in your data set, that they follow the state 18-digit prescribed format, that the first two digits of that parcel number pertain to the county, and the last three digits pertain to the taxing district that that parcel is located in. And then for personal property records or mobile home records, it will verify that the first two digits of the property number start with the two-digit county code. Another check that's performed within the Gateway Abstract application is verifying that there are not any duplicate parcel numbers within your data set. In other words, every property tax record that's in your data set must be unique, cannot be repeated. The Gateway Abstract application also does a state-assigned district check that verifies that any state-assigned taxing districts that are listed in your data set match to a valid active tax district that was contained on your county's certified budget orders for the Pay 21 cycle. The Abstract application also does a check on property type codes. These are codes that are associated with each property record. And if it's a real property record, it has a property type code of R associated with it, R for real. If it's personal property, it has a property tax code of P for personal. If it's an annually assessed mobile home record, it has a property tax code of M for mobile. If it's an oil record, it has a code of O for oil, and then if it's a gas record, it has a code of G for gas. So those are the 5 valid property type codes that can be associated with any of the records. And then another check that is performed on the data files when you upload them in the Gateway Abstract is a check for the TIP district ID formats. So the TIP districts, when you upload your information, all TIP districts have to follow the format of starting with a T, and then the 2-digit county code, and then the 3-digit TIP district ID. So it's T plus 5 characters after that. So any errors that are noted for any of these checks listed on this screen, that will actually result in a failure of the file from being processed. You really can't continue with submitting your data files in Gateway Abstract if there are any errors noted for any of these items on this screen. So any errors that get flagged on this part of the compliance review process need to be corrected before you could actually proceed with submitting your data in Gateway Abstract. Now, there are a number of checks, compliance review checks, that are performed on the property tax data outside the Gateway Abstract application. And several of the checks that are performed by the data team here at the DLGF include things such as looking for negative and non-numeric assessed values. That's basically verifying that for all your records in your property tax data, that there aren't any negative values. You can't have a negative tax bill sent to a property owner. It also looks for things like a blank taxpayer's name. That's to verify that for every tax record that's in your data set, there's an entry provided for the taxpayer's name. You're not going to be sending a tax bill to blank. There has to be a name associated with each tax record. We also provide or perform a check on government-owned parcels. These are parcels, real property parcels, that have a property class code in the range of 600 to 669. And the policy for these parcels is, if they're government-owned, when the county assessor rolls their values to the auditor's office in the summer, these particular parcels should have a gross assessed value of $0 because they're exempt from taxation. So that's the general principle, that for these particular records, they should have a gross assessed value of 0, and that's also reflected similarly in the tax data file, that the gross assessed value for these records will be listed as 0. On a similar note, for non-government owned exempt parcels, these are parcels that have a property class code in the range of 670 through 699. The policy for these particular records is that when the assessor's office rolls those values over to the auditor's office in the summer, those particular records actually do have a gross assessed value greater than 0. And then once they are imported into the auditor's tax and billing system, the auditor's office applies the appropriate exemption to those records, and then that will reduce the net assessed value down to 0, or potentially something greater than 0. But the gross assessed value for these particular parcels should actually be greater than 0 when they're rolled over to the auditor's office, and then when the auditor's office calculates taxes, the gross assessed value should be greater than 0, because at that point you have to apply the exemption to take down the value, the net assessed value, to 0, if that, or something greater than 0. And then another check that the data team performs is looking at the various AV allocations within the tax data file and the adjustments files, and verifies that the AV allocations for your land record totals the total land value for that record. Likewise, for the AV allocations for the improvements on a record, all those individual improvement AV allocations sum up to the total improvement value listed for that record. And similarly, in the adjustments file is the file that contains all the exemptions, deductions, and credits for all the tax records in the auditor's property tax data set. This check verifies that an exemption or a deduction that's broken down by the 1, 2, 3% circuit breaker buckets, the amounts in those individual 1, 2, 3% circuit breaker buckets actually total the total amount of the exemption, deduction, or credit, depending on what it may be. And in addition to the checks that we just talked about in the previous slide, the data team also does a number of checks comparing the information in the county's parcel file to what's shown in the county's tax data file. In particular, we look for any missing records that might be in either data set. And then we also look for discrepancies in gross assessed values between the parcel file and the tax data file. And then we do a similar check for the first prop file, the personal property data file, to the tax data file. Again, looking for missing records in either data set and discrepancies in gross AVs between either data set. The department does anticipate asking county auditors to provide a copy of the lock modification tracking document to help verify the discrepancies in gross AVs. So the lock modification tracking document, I know it sounds like a frightening document, but it really is not. It's a standard report that's already set up in your counties, in your tax and billing system. And if you recall last summer when the department was doing phase 3 software certification testing with each of the counties for the auditor's office, this was actually one of the reports that we had the county auditor's office generate as part of testing. So the report's already set up within your tax and billing system. And what this report is, it's simply an inventory of property records that have had their gross assessed value changed or modified between the time of the roll and balancing process last summer to the point of when your office, when the auditor's office, is calculating property taxes for the current pay cycle. So that's going to provide a complete listing of all the records and their changes in AVs. With that information, we can verify that when the data team is running its checks and looking at AVs in the parcel file and comparing them to AVs in the tax data file, or AVs in the first prop file and comparing them to the AVs in the tax data file, any changes in gross AVs that we come up with, there should be basically an entry on this report that's going to say, yeah, this record had its AV modified on November 15th of 2020, and it will show the original AV that was rolled and balanced to the auditor's office, and then its modified AV, and that will help us kind of reconcile those discrepancies in gross assessed values. We ask that the auditor's office email this tracking document, this lock modification tracking document, to the department's data inbox at data@dlgf.in.gov. And county auditors, if you have any question on where in your tax and billing system this report can be generated, we recommend that you reach out to your tax billing software vendor. I'm sure they'll be able to easily pinpoint, guide you in the direction of where you can generate this report in your system. So when the department completes its review of the county's property tax data, it will email the county auditor 3 documents with its compliance findings. And this email will contain a property tax issues workbook, and that's historically sent as an Excel file. The issues workbook provides a detailed itemized breakdown of all the records that contain either possible or probable errors when we were running the property tax data through our compliance review process. The email will also contain an attachment for the property tax compliance report. This normally is sent as a PDF, if I remember correctly. And the compliance report provides the summary, the statistical analysis of the property tax data that the county auditor submitted in Gateway Abstract. and most importantly, provides the official compliance status of your data, of your property tax data. And then the county auditors will also receive the Homestead Issues Workbook, and that's also another Excel file that's attached to the compliance email. The Homestead Issues Workbook, it provides an itemized breakdown of the records that generated either possible or probable errors when the data team was looking at the homestead records and the property tax data that you submitted, that the county auditor submitted via Gateway Abstract, and compares that information to what's currently in the homestead verification database for the county. So any discrepancies between the tax data information that you submitted and what's in the homestead verification database, this will generate a list of errors that will be listed on the Homestead Issues Workbook. So talking a little bit more about the Property Tax Issues Workbook that is sent to the county auditors after the data team completes its review process of the data. This workbook will contain multiple tabs, and each tab pertains to a certain compliance check that was run on the property tax data. And the tab will list all the various records that generated an error when we were running the data set error compliance checks. Now, the second bullet point on this slide, the Property Tax Issues Workbook will contain the same parcel to tax data and first property to tax data tabs listed on the Issues Workbooks for real property and personal property distributed upon conclusion of the spring compliance review process. What that bullet point is simply saying is that for any checks that compare the real property to property tax data or the personal property to property tax data, for any checks that generated errors, there's discrepancies in AVs, or there were missing records in one data set, we're going to list these issues, or list these on the tabs on the issues workbook for the county auditor's office. The assessor's office will receive those same tabs on their issues workbook. So both offices will have access to the same information. Therefore, they can work together and resolve any issues or discrepancies if necessary. So the information that's contained on the property tax issues workbook, comparing those data sets, will also appear on the same issues workbook going to the county assessor's office. So in terms of the official status at the end of the property tax compliance review process, there are two different possible outcomes. You could either be deemed as non-compliant or as compliant, which is ultimately what you want to receive as a status. If the county's property tax data is deemed non-compliant, then the county will need to review the errors that are noted on the issues workbook, make any necessary corrections, and then resubmit their data for another round of reviews, compliance reviews by the data team here at the DLGF. If the county's property tax data is deemed as compliant, then no further action is required by the county auditor in terms of making corrections and resubmitting the data files for another round of reviews for the current cycle. So once you receive a compliance status, you're basically good to go. That said, I would like to highlight or emphasize the second bullet point on this slide, and that's the county auditors, even if their data is deemed as compliant, they should still review the items that are issued on the issues workbook that they receive as part of the compliance email from the department. And then during the review, they need to determine what corrections might be needed to those applicable records so that the same issues don't get repeated or carried forward for the next submission cycle. So that covers, highlights the compliance review process of the property tax data that's submitted by the county auditors. Now we're going to talk a little more in detail about the data compliance process in the spring on the real and personal property assessment data that county assessors submit. So the spring compliance review process of real and personal property, it basically is the second part of the compliance review process. For county assessors that are on the webinar today, you're all very familiar with the primary review of your data sets that you submit to the department. That occurs during the previous fall. So your real property and personal property data sets are due by August 31st each year. And then after you submit them to the DLGF, then in the fall, the data team here at the DLGF conducts a pretty thorough review of your data sets and will issue you a report in the fall based on our results of looking at your data. So that's the primary review that's conducted on the assessment data in the fall. But there is a secondary review of the data set that occurs during the spring, and that compares the records in the auditor's property tax data that's conducted after the auditor has submitted their property tax data in Gateway Abstract. It's safe to say that the secondary compliance review of the real and personal property data in the spring is pretty limited in scope and really just focuses on the following checks here. It focuses on looking at comparisons between the parcel file and the tax data file. Again, looking for things such as missing records in either data set or discrepancies in gross AVs between those data sets. And then also for the personal property data and the tax data file, we do a similar review looking for missing records in either data set, and then also looking for discrepancies in gross AVs. Referencing an earlier point that we made about the lot modification tracking document, with having that document submitted to us, that will help us at least reconcile the discrepancies in gross AVs between the parcel file and the tax data file, or the first prop file and the tax data file. So when the department completes its review of the county's real and personal property assessment data in the spring, it will email the county assessor 2 documents with its findings. The compliance email that goes to the county assessor in the spring will contain the property issues workbook, which again is sent in an Excel file format. And that issues workbook, very similar to the property tax issues workbook, provides an itemized breakdown of the records that generated possible or probable errors when we ran the data through our compliance review process. And then the compliance email to the assessor will contain the compliance report itself, and that is sent as a PDF attachment to the email. And that compliance report provides the summary of the statistical analysis that we performed on the data. It also contains a comparison of the gross AVs in the real or personal property data compared to what was in the property tax or abstract data. And then most importantly, it contains the official compliance status of the data set. So speaking a little bit more about the property assessment issues workbook, kind of similar to the property tax issues workbook, this is a workbook that will contain multiple tabs. Each tab pertains to an individual or particular check that we performed on the data set. And each tab will list the records that generated either certain or possible errors when running that data through our compliance review process. Now, the second bullet point on this slide, the property assessment issues workbook sent after the review in the spring, will likely contain more tabs than the workbook sent in the fall, since the spring review includes the comparison between the real and personal property and the abstract data. So what that bullet point is saying is the issues workbook that you received from the department in the fall on real property or personal property, all those tabs on that workbook will also be present on the issues workbook you will receive in the spring when we complete our compliance review process in the spring. It's just that the spring workbook is going to contain those additional tabs that pertain to the comparisons between the parcel file and the tax data file, or the first prop file and the tax data file. So your spring issues workbook for county assessors will have more tabs on it compared to the issues workbook you received in the fall. But everything that you had on your fall issues workbook will also carry forward on your spring issues workbook. So in terms of an official status that's issued at the end of the real and personal property compliance review process in the spring, there are two possible outcomes. Your data could be deemed as compliant, non-compliant, or as compliant. So if your county's real and or personal property assessment data is deemed as non-compliant, then the county assessor needs to review the errors that are listed on the issues workbook, make any necessary corrections, and then resubmit that data for another round of compliance reviews. Ultimately, and ideally, if the county's real and or personal property assessment data is deemed as compliant, then there really is no further action needed from the county assessor's office in terms of making corrections and resubmitting their data for that particular pay cycle. However, very similar to what we were noting about the property tax data, even if your real property or personal property assessment data is deemed as compliant, we still very much encourage the county assessor's office to review the items that are included on the property assessment issues workbook and then determine what corrections might be needed for those records so that the issues that we noted for the pay 21 cycle do not carry forward to the pay 22 cycle when you submit your data next year. I should say at this point, it'd be later in the summer for your real property and personal property assessment data. So that is a summary of the spring data compliance review that's conducted on the real property and personal property assessment data. So kind of going forward, moving ahead to our final point that we want to discuss, the information that you submit via Gateway Abstract is actually available to the public, and that information is available on the Gateway Public Reporting site. So the Gateway Public Reporting site offers a variety of different reports to the general public. You do not need to have a Gateway account to access this information. It's read-only, so you can't make any changes to what you see. What you see on these reports on this website. The information that's contained in these various reports comes from the different data sets that local units of government submit via the different applications in Gateway. Additionally, certain data files that county auditors and county assessors submit to the department are available for download. And when we get to the end of the slide deck here in just a moment, I'll show you a few examples of the reports that are available on the Gateway Public Reporting site. But this screenshot here highlights where the information can be derived on the Gateway Public Reporting site. So this screenshot here shows the Gateway main menu. If you were to go to Google and type in Indiana Gateway, I think Gateway is the first, Indiana for Gateway Government Units is the first option that pops up. You click on that, and this will take you to what is the Gateway homepage. Now, if you were a county auditor and you were logging in to submit your abstract data, for example, you would go over to the left side of the screen and click on Local Officials Login here. But let's say you're just a member of the general public and you like to see what's available in terms of reports on Gateway. At the top of the menu bar, there is an option for report search. You would click on that option, and that will take you to the report search screen. And this is going to provide all the various types of reports that are available to the public based on different kind of subject area. The county abstract reports is located towards the bottom of the left-hand side of the screen there. The county abstract public reports, and again, in just a moment, I'll show you a few examples of what's available under that section. And then, in terms of the data files that county assessors and county auditors submit to us on an annual basis, several of those files are available to the public for download on the Gateway Public Reporting site. So instead of clicking on the report search, if a member of the general public, I should say, wanted to download the files, they would click on the download option there at the top of the menu, of the Gateway menu, and that will take them to the download data page. And then kind of towards the bottom part of the screen, there's a property files section. And under that section of the screen, we make available 4 different data files that county assessors and county auditors submit to us on an annual basis. The parcel file is available for download. The PersProp file, or personal property file, is available for download. And then the tax data file and adjustments file, which are 2 of the data files that are part of the Gateway Abstract submission process. Those 2 data files are available for download. And the county or the public can download those files going back all the way to the, I think it's the 2011 to 2012 cycle. And then they can download the information for an individual county, or we also make the data available for all 92 counties within one file. Currently on this page, for the data download page, I think we have the 19 page 20 information available. So that's the most recent year of data we have available on this page. And in terms of when the next cycle will be available, that really is contingent upon when we get through our spring compliance review process and deem all 92 counties data as compliant. So once we complete our reviews, then that will trigger the process for adding the 20 page 21 information to this page. So that probably will happen sometime in, I would say, maybe May or June of this year, that the 20 page 21 data will be made available for download to the public. So now that we have a little bit of time here still remaining, I'll show you a couple of the reports that are available on the Gateway Public Reporting site. So as I was referencing earlier, so this is the Gateway main page. If you were needing to actually upload, submit information as a local unit official, you would click on the local officials login here, and that's where it would take you to that applications page where you could select abstract or budget or debt management, whatever application you were needing to submit information. But if you're just kind of browsing and don't need to log in, you're just a member of the general public, and you were wanting to see what reports are available, click on the report search option at the top. As I said just a moment ago, this is the report search page. The information from the county abstract information is available on the county abstract public reports. Click on that, and this will show you the list of various public reports that are available for the abstract data. Probably the most comprehensive of the reports available is down at the bottom, and that is the district summary report. So if you click on that, this will take you to the report builder page, and here you can select whatever county you would like. I'm going to select my home county of Floyd. Let's see here. There we go. And page 20 cycle. So last year, and I click on View Report, and this is going to provide kind of an overview summary. This report comes closest to mirroring what the former Excel version of the abstract looked like. It's going to have kind of a complete comprehensive view of all the various data sections that are in Gateway Abstract. It will show you by taxing district the gross AVs broken down by the 1, 2, 3% buckets, as well as the total amount, and then the adjustments. The adjustments are going to be your exemptions and deductions, again broken down by the 1, 2, 3% amounts, and the total adjustment amount for each tax district, and that will derive the net assessed value for each tax district. We have information pertaining to TIF AV for each tax district, and then your tax rates, tax levies, property tax credits, and then the miscellaneous charges like statement processing charges, late assessment penalties, delinquencies, and then finally total taxes. So this is going to provide kind of the broadest overview of the information that's submitted in Gateway Abstract by a county. And if you wanted to, you can actually export this information. We offer the various formats here: CSV, PDF, Excel, Word. Those are all available options if you want to export this actual report. And then just another example of a report that's available. You want to see the information for net AVs for a county that was in terms of their abstract data submission. Click on the net AV totals. Then I'll choose Floyd. Tax year is 2020, view report. And then again, this information is broken down by tax district, and we'll show you the net AV for each tax district by the 1, 2, 3% amounts, and then the net AV for real property, net AV for personal property, and a total net AV value for that tax district. And again, as I was referencing earlier, you can export this if you would like via CSV, PDF, Excel, Word. So again, those are just a couple examples of the reports that are available to the public on the Gateway Public Reporting site. Now, one other item I did want to also reference or highlight, and this is very much pertinent for county auditors that are on the webinar today. While you're working on submitting your data files in Gateway Abstract, if you have any questions about that process, there is a very thorough and helpful manual on submitting your abstract information. So if you go to the Auditor States website, this is their homepage, and then if you click on local government, there is an option under the local government page for Spring Abstract Manual. Click on that. And this is basically the Gateway Abstract Submission User Guide that, again, will provide a thorough detail and explanation of the how-tos, the various steps you need to follow for submitting your abstract information to the Auditor States Office. So if you have any questions about submitting your abstract data in Gateway Abstract, this is a good resource to go to. Again, it's located on the Auditor's homepage, Auditor States homepage, under the local government section. So that said, that brings us to the end of the actual webinar today. Are there any questions? And again, if you have any questions, you could please type those in the Q&A option there on the Teams menu. All right, well, I don't see any questions coming up so far. So, again, I think we've gone through everything that we wanted to cover today. So we have come to the end of our presentation today. If you do happen to have a question related to today's presentation that comes to you after this webinar concludes, please feel free to email that question to the data inbox at data@dlgf.in.gov. Again, that address is data@dlgf.in.gov. Also, we will be posting today's PowerPoint presentation, the Q&A document, a webinar survey, and the continuing education credit form for today's session to the department's webinar page. If I'm not mistaken, the department will be sending out a separate email correspondence with a link to this information as well. So we would like to thank everyone once again for attending today's webinar and wish everyone a great rest of their day. Thank you.